Boys, I'm sorry to disappoint the many people who adore the videotape intro by not having it in this video. I know some of you only watch these videos for that exact sequence, according to the analytics, but I want to start this episode off with a bit of a flex. The TLDR is, I met Kevin Penkin at the SmashCon this year, and the homie actually watches the videos on this channel. Not just the reviews either. He recognized me by my face and called out my YouTube name. Honestly, he was so down to earth and just as awesome as you'd expect. Just a swell dude overall that I was super thankful to meet. I'll have a full video later in the few weeks because it was quite an amazing story. And Kevin, if you're watching right now, thank you so much for what you've done for this community. We truly appreciate it. So seeing as Papa Penkin himself has given this channel his seal of approval, I would officially like to decree that this channel is officially a certified, pretty good channel, eh? Hello everyone, welcome today to another review episode of Made in Abyss Season 2. Today we are looking at Episode 3, Village of the Hollows. Now please bear with me, my voice is basically gone, I'm quite sick at the moment. Hopefully it doesn't infringe too much on the commentary, but I really wanted to talk about this episode, so just bear with me. Now I did speculate over the last episodes, the pacing of this series, and it seems to do what I anticipated over the last few weeks on Twitter. The anime seems to be following the manga pretty closely from this point, and is making episodes out of 1.5 chapters each time. I'm still pretty damn certain that we'll be getting a conclusive arc this season, but that does mean cuts will be made, and the pacing of episodes may differ. But I'll be sure to cover those changes in the future as I have with these reviews anyway. Now speaking of changes, let's compare the manga to the anime. So being perfectly honest, the manga and the anime barely differ in terms of its sequences outside of the very final scene of the episode. Again, the Ganja Corp's backstory was a mini arc that happened midway through this arc in a bulk of chapters. Parallel editing wasn't used at all in the original source material. The final sequence uses the beginning of chapter 49, whilst the majority of this episode is focused on the remainder of chapter 40 and the entirety of chapter 41. I'm a big fan of this storytelling choice as it quickens the pace, but also simultaneously expands the world of Made in Abyss even more than it already does. If it wasn't apparent by the intro, the entirety of this arc is based in this village, and I think by splicing the Ganja Corp's backstory arc into the mix, it doesn't make viewers feel sick of seeing the village so often. This was actually a common complaint in the manga, but to be perfectly honest, I think that the criticism was mostly based on the large wait time between chapters. This arc, fun fact, was in the works for over 4 years in its original form. But in terms of its narrative differences, that's really about it. However, there are some interesting changes and depictions in this episode compared to the manga I would like to bring up. First and foremost is this sequence here. Now yes, a weird segue, but trust me, I've got my reason. The manga and the anime seem to be differing a lot in terms of depiction. Rake being tickled in the anime is honestly quite a harmless and semi-wholesome moment. There are no sexual undertones or devious intentions behind it. Whilst in the manga, these panels, fun fact, I actually had to semi-censor in my edit because of these things. The anime simply handled this moment better. It didn't unnecessarily pander to fetishes and just coherently told a humorous joke. To clarify, I'm not kink-shaming. Well, actually, yeah, no, I am. These are kids. But the reason I bring this up is because despite Kinema Citrus's rep for being incredibly faithful to the source material, I feel in this episode they actually held back in their depiction of gore. Menya being crushed is far more brutal in the manga with liquids pouring out of them, and Ma-san, who by the way, is fucking beautiful and I would die for her, is ripped in two in the manga, whilst in the anime only limbs are torn off and some of her skin is peeled. Now to clarify, this is still pretty gory, and the animation is weirdly beautiful in how seamless it is, but compared to the manga it just doesn't feel as sinister. Speaking of which, another thing I will say is a bit more clear in the manga is how the scream that Ma-san elicits affects Nanachi. Now I don't believe I'm overanalyzing this, but I know what I say might just sound like I'm pulling shit out of my ass. The scream in the manga is presented in a way where your eyes naturally follow the text downwards, and this panel takes up almost the entirety of the page and is meant to feel overbearing and intense. But the motion of the text also feels reminiscent of the elevator sequence in Season 1. The scream trails the page like an elevator and makes the connection between Ma-san's screams and Minnie's scream when bearing the curse more apparent, which is why Nanachi feels the way they do. I feel the anime made that a little harder to pick up, but then again it's not exactly super obvious in the manga either, but I feel like that's the intention behind it. Small other details that were left out were simply that the toilet in the inn is apparently pulsating in the manga. This insinuates that the toilet is also a Narahade, And if these Narahade take the form of their desires, then oh boy, this homie down bad, bro. Also, the food served in the inn is also known as Kyubei Sasu, which is described as a meal with the scent of roasted grains. But in terms of the manga, that's honestly about it. Now that those differences are out the way, let's talk about the anime episode. Let's go through a synopsis of what happened in episode 3, season 2. So our team ventured through the village of Hollows and learned some very interesting things. First and foremost, the village doesn't appear to be affected by the curse due to the lack of a force field, which instantly makes the village fishy. Something doesn't seem right about it. In particular, something doesn't seem organic about it. How it came into being is of mystery. They soon learn of Prishka's whereabouts. She's being worked on by the one who was good at the stone that Magikaja-san referenced in the previous episode. As we know, Prishka is currently a life reverberating stone, which is the sole ingredient in creating a white whistle. While she is being carved into one, Magikaja-san shows them around the village and teaches them about the currency in Uraburu. We learn that Magikaja-san is also a Narahade, who is actually a form of smells/gas. The canister he has isn't a real body, but something used to trap him inside so that it doesn't disappear. This also, by the way, is something that I want to talk about in the last episode, but couldn't due to spoilers. I think this more than warrants the CGI for him, as he is an outlier from all the other Narahade in the village, whose bodies have taken up the shape based on their own desires. Now, the currency system might seem complex, but it's actually quite simple. Currency is generated through desire and is referred to as value. The Hollows all have desires, and these desires, depending on how much they value something, changes the amount their item/desire is worth. An example being Riko herself. The people of the village strongly believe human children are of very good value. Value can be generated via various means, but one thing that is forbidden in the village is tarnishing one's value or stealing one's value. In doing so, the perpetrator will be balanced by the village. The balancing is like a tax collector in that it will determine the damage done and use whatever it can as compensation, personal belongings, and even your own body parts alike. After my beautiful baby girl Ma-san gets balanced for harming Menya, who Riko values very much, her limbs and skin are used as compensation, and becomes Riko's currency. She uses that to book the team at an inn inside the village. Riko eats some shit and then needs to shit, and Nanachi and Reg go their separate ways when a character known as Fapuda makes her appearance at the village entrance. Reg goes to see her, and Nanachi and Magikaja-san venture to find Riko some fresh food and water for her stomach. Reg encounters Fapuda, who we then learn through Magikaja-san is essentially royalty to the village, and then the episode ends. Now I gotta be honest, this episode was vastly superior to the manga. While yes, it may have toned down certain sequences, the musical choice, pace, and animation were just so brilliant. There were no epic moments, there were no crazy and insane segments. It is just a brilliant way to trail onwards from our last episode. Also, I really can't stress enough how brilliantly handled the animation has been. Seeing all these Hollows move around really brings this whole village to life. And speaking of animation, I gotta talk about Magikaja-san and just reiterate that I'm not just a cuck for this series. The choice of CGI was the right choice for Magikaja-san. He is so emotive and expressive, and honestly, I'm not once taken out of the scene by his design choice. Kinema Citrus knew what they were doing with him. While he was definitely more threatening in the manga, I do like this almost puppy-like sensation you see in him whenever he speaks. Another thing I really liked was some of the more original shots in this episode. Naturally, there were way more reaction shots, and the sequence with Ma-san getting balanced was just way more upsetting in the anime. I really felt for her, whilst in this particular chapter in the manga, she kinda just feels a bit more of a throwaway character. But the anime made you feel the exact same way Riko did. You felt genuinely bad for a Narahade who actually did something terribly wrong. Fuck man, this adaptation is brilliant, dude. I also really liked how they translated the currency system visually. I couldn't quite understand what I was seeing when the coins appeared in the manga, but I like that the anime helps make the value system more accessible to the viewers. The jumbling of coins and how they interlace with one another was such a cool and unique way to present the currency. It's small details like this that just help bring the What a Main Abyss to life. And I need to talk about Fapuda. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? I like that it wasn't some crazy high and mighty entrance like my depiction in the manga. I like that it just felt natural. Just seeing it fully realized after all this time was just such a nice feeling. While I will say the art feels more superior in the manga, the anime did utilize its animation with that slick breeze to emphasize the composure and mystery. Just brilliant work all around. And finally, the final sequence with Ganja. This was also really well handled. I felt the anime did a great job of portraying the stakes of this layer in such a neat and quick way. And that Golden City shot, dude, was amazing. I love how hopeful that moment feels, and then how instantly shattering it is when the robots get dismantled by the creatures of the sixth layer. It just showcases the stakes of the journey they're going on super well. Just overall, a great episode that opens up even more questions and answers a few from the previous episode. I'm so keen to see how this anime will play out, and how anime-onlys and manga viewers alike will react to the story that's being told. But I actually come with a grim warning, and a reminder. The next episode of Made in Abyss could potentially be the most controversial. If this anime follows the manga to a T, there'll be a lot of problems. I can see Twitter warriors and Made in Abyss haters coming out of their shells next episode, so just be warned everyone. The next episode could potentially have some very uncomfortable imagery that even I had to censor quite hard in my animation of it. Sometimes this series can be, as Reg would say, irredeemable. But hey, that'll be all from me today though. Thanks so much for watching this review. I appreciate your time and I hope to see you next week, even deeper in the abyss.